Welcome to Rakish, where shadow meets sunlight and darkness wears a smile. A charming little farming town in the heartland of the USA, founded by Colonel Harper P. Rakish in 1894. The Rakish town grew from catering to the surrounding farmers, providing seeds, goods, clothing, and services like a barber and fix-all shop. In 1929, just after surviving the harsh depression, Rakish was consumed by a fast, mischievous fire. It started in the middle of the night by the blacksmith shop, then quickly engulfed the Hayes General Store. By sunrise, one person had died and all of the buildings and trees were ash, except for the last house at the end of town, the Rakish house. Some whisper that the dressmaker might have been visiting the blacksmith that night, and her husband found out. Colonel Harper P. Rakish received his title from his time in the Civil War, and by 1894, at the age of 60, he retired from his military service and purchased several hundred acres of farmland, building the modest Rakish house close to the main road. By 1896, he had married Miss Betty, a 37-year-old spinster. Their first child was a daughter named Janie Lynn, born in 1899, and their second child died in birth, taking Betty's life. Harper never remarried and died shortly after Janie Lynn married James Carson in 1917. Janie Lynn gave birth to their only child, Charles, 2 years later, and James took over the farm up until the 1929 fire. Some people say the colonel unexpectedly died. He was in good health. After the smoke cleared, many townsfolk moved away, but the farmers still needed their supplies. So James decided to open up a five and dime and hired help for the farm, and Janie Lynn rebuilt her seamstress shop. Eventually the town grew back, but into a mid-century styling that you can see today, that is in rot and in decay. Charlie grew right into the role of the farmer and took over from his father, James. When Charlie married Martha in late 1941, his parents moved to the apartment above the dressmaker's shop. James and Jamie Lynn ran their store till their fiery death in the 1962 tragedy. The Rakish house had a new couple to occupy its space, and before spring, little Victor Carson was born unto this world. Charlie and Martha became the rock for the community. They kept businesses going, supported the local schools and the fire department. The farmlands had made their families wealthy, but the 80s weren't nice to the farmers. Charlie and Martha lived out their days modestly, in a modest house and a modest life. Died weeks apart in 2015. He was 96 and she was 95. Some people say that that's when the town really died. The gas station was constructed in 1940 by the Williams family. The Williams were a quiet, distant couple only known as Mr. and Mrs., no one ever knowing their first names. They never had children, and they kept their garage in top shape and hired teenager Vic to pump gas and taught him to change oil and repair cars. Vic took over the gas station and ran the only mechanic shop in town. Some folks think the Williams moved to Florida. Vic opened the tow yard in his parents' front yard and became the much-needed tow truck driver too. Around the late 1980s, or was it the early 1990s, the state law required new and expensive underground gas tanks, and Vic didn't want the responsibility, so he sold it to Ted Peterson. Ted was a rich farmer that lived in the area. Ted turned the gas station into a doo-wop 1950s nostalgic museum with two beautiful restored cars in the garage bays. They still sit in there today. He welcomed tourists and entertained friends until he passed away in 2011, leaving his collection to his son, whose disability keeps him in New York City. Some people say you can hear the Chattanooga choo-choo playing from inside the station late on a Friday night. Vic still owns the tow yard, a parking lot of abandoned cars found along the byways and highways that remained orphaned in his chain-link metal jail. His pride and joy tow truck sits gathering pollen and dust layers. He only lived in the rakish house for 35 years, then bought a house across town. About a year ago, Vic had knee surgery and took time to recover, but no one has really needed a toast since the flood of 2020. Vic now sits and watches TV all day. He never married. Some say Vic had a girlfriend and she disappeared. The Dutch Windmill Motel was built in 1955. Ed and Edith Jansen loved the hospitality business and were eager to add on to their motel in under 2 years after first constructed. The motel was a popular spot for travelers, and the pool addition attracted well behaved families. By the time Ed and Edith died, the motel was already run down. Their three adult children wouldn't agree on how to run the motel, causing it to close after the flood of 2020. Some people say that you can sometimes hear children playing in the pool. The diner was built by the Jansen family in 1958. It became a meeting hall for the locals and a friendly stop for travelers. When Ed and Edith retired in 1995, their family sold the diner. Since then, it has changed hands several times before finally closing in 2020. Some people claim to smell chicken fried steak wafting from the abandoned building. The coffee stand was opened in 2006 by Annie Seach and was incredibly successful until the 2020 flood that washed out the highway and a new road deterred traffic around Rakish. Some people say Annie disappeared before she closed the stand, and others say she disappeared after she shut down. The town of Rakish is barely a whisper and more forgotten in modern times. The charming town facade built over the ashes of a darker secret. Vic, the last remaining heir to the Rakish family, now sits in a ghost town. Some say the name Rakish was derived from the charismatic charm of its founder, while others claim it was a nod to the town's more illicit activities.